Welcome back, boils and ghouls. Tonight we are joined by Nick Pitarra, and I gotta tell you, I found this guy through Alpi Victor, and Alpi is the guy doing Hugh marks, and he recommended I check this book out. Anything Alpi tells me, I'm on like white on rice. So I went over, I checked out Ax-Wielder Jon. Guys, I cannot wait for you to back this book. Tonight, we're gonna start at the beginning. Just wait till you hear some of these fun stories. So, how you doing tonight, Nick? Thanks so much for being on the show, man.
Man, I'm doing great, and I can't tell you how much it means to me for you to have me on. The easy part is making the book; it's tough, but the hardest part for most professionals is trying to promote it. And when you reached out and you said your friend Alpi had put you in touch, I got to get in touch with him and thank him because having you reach out and say, "Hey, I'd like to read the advanced copy," meant a lot. And then when you read it and we were so enthusiastic about it, I was so pumped for this interview. So thank you for your time, man.
Oh, I can't thank you enough. I mean, I love Alpi's stuff. He's doing this book, Hugh Marks. You guys should all check that out. Obvious plug. But when I went and checked out Axe-Wielder Jon, I hit you up for that preview. And I got to say, 2 pages into that book, I was hooked. The art is like Jeff Darrow, like thrown at European comics a la Mobius. And the storytelling, just your grasp of narrative is incredibly impressive. And when I reached out to you, you were kind enough to send me to just, send me a little bulletin of what you've been working on and where your career started. So I kind of want to start at the beginning and just talk a little bit about how you got into comics, because I feel like there's just a love of the medium bleeding from your work. And I can see a lot of different influences at work, but all filtered through this very unique visual eye that you have that you channel to your work. When did you decide that you wanted to make that what you wanted to do?
I've thought about this question a lot. I think it goes back starting with playing with action figures as a kid. Like I was always one of those kids at like 12 or 13 that didn't want to give up my toys. Like I'm gonna have to grow out of them. And what I realized you're doing when you're playing with your action figures is you are playing make believe, right? And you're moving these figures around, you're acting them out. They're little vessels of like machismo or whatever you're into, right? They like capture those things. And so for me, drawing is an extension of playing with my action figures again, right? It's like I get to have them all back and it's socially acceptable now. And I would say like I got into comics, like I used to, I got a little collector's thing. I like collect comic art. When I was a kid, I collected baseball cards, and I'd go to the baseball card shop, and it was like during the 90s, and there would be cool comic books, like Cyber Force or whatever was out at the time, Spawn, and Death of Superman. And I'd get those and not read them, or I would look at the pictures and not read them. Something about the way those guys drew in the 90s, like a Jim Lee style, let's say per se, is kind of romanticized. And the best way I can explain it is like when Batman's mad, he puts his leg up on the bar stool and he's mad. It looks like the Captain Morgan pose, right? And something about that didn't hook me sequentially, so I would never read them, or I never really thought a story was going on. It was really a broken language for me at the time. And then that all changed. I didn't draw at all. And when I was 17, I got kicked out of an honors level class for English because I stopped turning my work in, put into a remedial class. And in that class, I met a guy going to the Kubert School, and he loved comic books. And he started taking me to the comic shop. And at that time, I went to the comic shop and I looked at all the stuff, and it was still kind of strange a little bit. But then I saw a cover to a book, and it just clicked, like everything clicked. And it was The Authority, and The Authority by Mark Millar and Frank Quietly. And now why I draw the way I do. But when I saw the way Quietly moved his figures, when his Batman or Midnight or whoever is mad, it was like you'd be mad in real life. Like you've pissed me off, so I'm going to slightly turn my head, and you can slightly raise the shoulder a little bit to show he's angry. And it wasn't this romanticized thing; it was this really grounded, lived-in thing. And then I was like, oh God, Batman's mad. And then I'm turning the pages, and then I'm the story was really over the top. And at the time, I thought it was the most genius thing I'd eever read, because it was the only thing I'd ever read, because it was a big play on the Avengers fighting the JLA, right? And so I like, superheroes can kill each other. What? Superheroes can be gay. What? Like, it was just through the roof. And I was like, started hunting down the back issues, and just started drawing, like trying to look at them and draw, and like learning the style, and obviously found Mobius and Jeff Darrow and Frank Quietly. And it was like, another one for me who's passed away, Seth Fisher. He was kind of like a blockier guy. And I know you said you checked out Astonishing Tales, my first thing I did at Marvel. You can see the huge Seth Fisher influence on me there. And so, yeah, I started getting hooked and bought a drafting table, bought how-to books. And my buddy at the Kubert School, the semester before he graduated, I drove up there, stayed up there for him for like 4 or 5 months, and just took all the I took all the classes, but stayed in the house. I did all the assignments, but didn't pay the Kubert School. And so, and I did that. And then I just started going to conventions and hoofing it. And I would always get positive reactions from my work. And it was kind of more amorphous, and more like, as I got older, I always describe it as like a video game system. You start out and you're like 8-bit, 16-bit. And like, Frank Quietly's like a PS10 or something. He's like so far ahead. He's drawing from the future. It's insane. But I'm like, you get more tight. You get more tight. You can move cloth around a little better. And it's like your graphics processor is building. And then that's what I've done over time. And the one lesson that Quietly's told me, and he tells everyone, is always do your best work. And for me, that's been a gift. It's every time I sit down, I'm trying to draw better than myself, outdo myself. And if you only focus on you, you can beat you. And if you're only beating you, eventually you'll compare to others and you can start getting jobs and stuff. But if you look out, like if you go on Instagram now, there's millions of people that draw better than you, and it's like a daunting thing. But really, you only have to beat yourself from the day before, and you got enough, throughout life, you'll have enough time to do that if you keep doing it. So I think that's why Quietly's gotten himself to an unbelievable level. Guys like Darrow that are always pushing themselves are my idols. So I'm always trying to push myself, and then with this new book, Ax-Wielder Jon, I was at a point where I really wanted to do my own thing. I was like at a point where, I wasn't going to ask a publisher or anybody if it's okay if I do my own thing. Like I knew I was going to make it. The idea came to me at a really special time, or a really, a bleak time. But like the idea came to me when my daughter was really sick in the NICU, and she had these stomach problems and had multiple surgeries. And I started doodling in the NICU, and the idea for Jon came, and it just kept coming. And when I was out, I had such respect for the idea, even though I know it's a silly idea. It's a crazy story, but I had such appreciation that he came to me when I needed him, that I was like, it is beneath me to ask. I'm not going to ask anyone if I can create this book, So and it was like, and I know I can get it published. Probably I've got a few guys follow me that are pretty big as far as can get stuff done. And I'm friends with Hickman, and collaborated with Hickman for 15 years. I can write Hickman, and we can get it anywhere. But I just wanted to do it all on my own and without any interference, and just get it out as honestly as I could. And that's kind of a very, very brief overview of how I got my start and how I got today. So we can pepper that in with some really thoughtful questions or more elaborate answers. Let's put it that way.
So just so you know, that shows. I mean, I pointed this out to you when we spoke. When I looked and I was reading the PDF that you sent me, which is still just a rough, it's incomplete. But just looking at those pages, every day I can see you taking yourself to task and saying, I want to work on this. I'm going to make this a more dynamic page. I'm going to work on my storytelling. I want to get more emotion into these pages. And there was something about that story that really sucked me in a way that most books do not. It resonated. It hit me on a very emotional level, which on the surface, I did not understand with a guy who's, slashing people in half with an axe. But the farther you get into it, the characters, the way that you approach things, it just began to resonate more and more with me. And when I found the story about your daughter, and I read that write-up that you have on Instagram, which I'm going to link in the description below, I knew why this resonated so much. That has been building for a very long time. Like you said, you've been working with Hickman for 15 years now. Anybody looking at you can see you're not an old guy, man. You kind of snuck your way into the Kubert School. And then not long after that, you popped up in Astonishing Tales, and we mentioned it before, but Mojo World, I believe, was the name of it. Can you talk a little bit about how you ended up doing Mojo World?
So what I would do as far as, and this is probably a good, uh, probably good advice for aspiring artists. So I would work a day job. I would wait tables or I would work fast food, and I would save up my money, and I would try to go to conventions and always enter art competitions. And when I went to the conventions, I didn't care about the art competitions. I would always go to the artist alley and meet all the pros and show them my work. And secretly I wanted them to tell me I was good. And then if they told me I sucked, I'd be like, well, I'm going to tell you. And I'd go back home and work. But really, I was only fulfilling working more, and it was like either way, I was either lying to myself or not. But the end result was I would always be jazzed up or pissed off, and I'd be back at the table working. So I would always do that. I would save my money and do that all the time. And as I had my day job, and I didn't quit my day job till I was 29 or 30 years old, and started really full time. Like I'd gotten a little bit of work at Marvel through Hickman, but basically I entered a contest in 2006, the Wildstorm Talent Search, and it was like the Wizard World circuit, and and I was on Digital Webbing at the time, which is a message board for aspiring pros. At least it was back in the day. And I was on another board called 10 Ton Studios. And we would do these little art competitions, little art drawings. And then everyone was sharing that there was this Wildstorm Talent Search. And the winner got to move to La Jolla for a summer and work at the Wildstorm Studios. And I was like, I'm going to enter that competition. And I remember posting my pages for it, my samples for it. Everyone was going to do the same 3 pages. And a lot of people told me, don't waste your money on that flight, kid. You know what I mean? And I was like, all right, whatever. I was like, then I'm going to rework the pages, right? So then I flew out there, turn my samples in, and they, instead of picking one person, they picked 5 of us to compete against each other because there was 5 really good portfolios. I got to do a panel with Jim Lee and like Ali Garza and all these guys, like, so it was super cool. And so then I was like, if there's like 100 people turning in portfolio and I was the top 5, I felt pretty good about it. I ended up not getting the gig. And so 2 years later, Comic Book Resources, which is the popular website that covers comic books, they had a competition called Comic Book Idol, and that's kind of like American Idol, but instead of American Idol, every week they gave us a 3 or 4 page script we had to draw, and it would be like CB Cebulski's the guest judge, or Ryan Otley was a guest judge, and so we had all these guest judges, and we would get picked off, and so over 200 people send their portfolio to that one. And I was like, I put in my portfolio, and I knew I was drawing differently than everyone else because you could see the entries. And I was like, I think I have a chance that they pick me. And sure enough, they picked me. And so I was like, this is awesome. But then I had to like use all of my vacation time at work, because how can you do 4 pages in a week? You know what I mean? When you barely, I'm doing 4 samples every 6 months, and now I'm doing 4 pages in a week. This is, of course, you lie and say you can. So then I went and I do the competition. Everyone's getting voted off. I get like in the top 5, maybe. And there's some really talented guys that came out of that competition, a lot of established pros. And I get voted off, and the winner was going to get to do like a pinup in a book and get published. So I'm like, and I wanted this bad. I wanted this so bad. I was going crazy. And I did an Invincible script. And in the Invincible script, it said that Invincible was flying. He sees something on the ground. He stops midair and goes, saves the day down on the ground. The way I work in comics is generally Marvel style with Hickman. And this is going to play into this and how he saw my stuff and liked me. For me, when Invincible's having a good time flying, I had him chasing some ducks in the air, right? So I added these ducks to the script. When he stops midair, it works because if a duck's flying, it can hit Invincible in the back and show it in space. Then he goes down and saves the day. Well, we still had that duck, like duck hunt falling down. He saves the day, and then at the end, a duck is falling, and Invincible catches him out on his foot, which was, I thought, genius. I thought, this is perfect. I turned it in, and everybody's like, where did these ducks come from? Right? They didn't get it. They didn't like it. I got voted off, right? And I was like, mother crap, So I'm like walking, and I was really content because I put my best effort in. And I felt good. I was surprised how good I felt, even though I just lost this opportunity. And the same day, I get a message from Marvel saying that, hey, would you like to work on a Mojo project with us? And I was like, wow, how did they see my work? So I wrote Marvel back. I wrote the editor. It was John Barber, who gave me my first break. And he said, I said, hey, how did you guys hear about me? He's like, oh, this new writer named Jonathan Hickman. And this is before Hickman had done anything at Marvel. Reached out. He told us that he pitched this Mojo story, and he said you want it. You want it. Never met Hickman. Never heard of Hickman. I went and bought Nightly News, and the lead character of Nightly News is a pie chart, from what I can tell. You know what I mean? Like pie charts, and like why does this guy like my work? Makes no sense. So I was like, could you please send me his number? So I call him and I say, Jonathan, Marvel told me you reckon me for this gig, and I will tell you, man, you changing my life, dude. This is a dream come true. Thank you. And he's like laughed. He's like, oh, no big deal. I see you're a big fan of Seth Fisher through your work, and I love Seth Fisher too. And we're going to do a bang up job on this. It's going to be awesome. And so we hit it off, and that's how I got my first like 48 page Marvel story. It's broken up like 8 pages over like 6 issues or something. But I needed that. I could only do about 8 pages a month at that time. And so I did the gig, and we hit it off, and he wanted to keep working together. And it ended up like that was more of a tight script because it was at Marvel. But once we did Red Wing. But once we got to Manhattan Projects, it was Marvel style. It was like, Nick, here's an idea for this one. Draw it out. And I'm very like playing with my action figures, acting it out. I give it back to John, and he's putting words in their mouth, and it just like playing jazz. I'm over here doing this, and he's doing that. And the way his mind works is he thinks big arcs. And the way my mind works is I'm living in like deep into the panels. So you got a point, like systems have a whole, my brain and an arm. You had a brain in John and an arm in me, and we just worked like a system. And so, and I love silly humor, and John would be like, why did you do this? Like, how am I going to explain this? And he would kind of be like, I'd read it, and it'd be like little winks at me and the dialogue and stuff where he's like, that sucked, because he's, Einstein would be like, whatever, you know what I mean? I'm like, oh, screw you, John. That was a good joke. But sometimes he would put words in, and I didn't necessarily agree with him, but fans reacted so well. They like loved it. And we just played off each other really well there. So we kept working together. I did Red Wing with him. And then we launched Manhattan Projects, and that was to date my most successful thing. I was nominated for an Eisner for it, for best ongoing series, against Batman and Saga and stuff, which was incredible. We lost, of course, because Saga's amazing. And then we made the New York Times bestsellers list, and I get residuals from it to this day. So, and there's always media stuff, but we never announce media stuff like a lot of people do. But we've had like really close. I mean, this one's long gone now, but like Matt Parker and Trey Stone, like they got on the phone with Hickman and we're all about it at one point. Like this was years ago. And then right now there's a really big person interested in it too. So if it ever hits off again, maybe we'll go back to the Manhattan Projects. But it's a project. That's a project that keeps giving back to me. And those pages that I drew forever ago are still paying me. So it taught me a lot about betting on yourself, working on that project.
Let's talk a little bit about Red Wing. That was a pretty good tonal shift from that original Astonishing Tales work. And I felt like it really exemplified a lot of what you would go to work on as far as your narrative storytelling that showed up, especially in Manhattan Projects. Like, did Hickman suggest that you guys go off to Image together, or was like Red Wing something that just kind of happened and you guys moved to Image together, or how did that come together?
So we had the idea for Manhattan Projects first. And Image, you got to remember that this Image boom, never forget, always thank Hickman Image and everyone who's at Image now. Nobody was at Image at the time. This was before Saga launched. This was before Walking Dead TV show came out, all that stuff, right? So this is what happened. Everyone was doing the Epic line because Bendis was over at Marvel with it. Hickman told me, I got my teaching degree in the middle of all this, slowly but surely. And I had an offer to teach, like $50,000 a year and be an art teacher. And Hickman told me, hey, we can do a book at Marvel. And I was like, all right, that sounds good. If I got to tell everyone I'm not working, at least I'll have a Marvel book. And what he wanted to do was do Manhattan Projects potentially under the Epic line. But Marvel wanted a percent. And Hickman said, no way, I'm not doing that. But everyone was going over to Epic at the time, right? Or I think it was the Epic line, right? So Hickman, I was like, dude, I wouldn't have a career right now if it wasn't for you. He's like, let's do this, Nick. Let me make a mini series. I got this idea for time traveling fighter pilots, and I got this vision for when a a jet fighter, an F-16 gets shot down. As it gets shot down, it turns into a biplane, something like that, right? And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, but all right, I'm in. Let's do it. I trust you. He's like, let's do this in Image, and let's see how he does. And this is, I don't talk finances, but I made no money on that thing. Like, I had never even drawn a full issue. Remember, my last thing I did was 8 pages long. So he didn't know if I was going to flake or what. So I think I got an advance of like $100 a page to penciling. It was terrible, but it came. It was early. It was early on, and I got a percent of the property, so it's fine. But like it went from like turning down that teaching gig to penciling a book for $100 a page. So I this is a gamble. This is my first gamble when I bet on myself, and it worked out. So we go over there, and it sells over 20,000 copies. And Image is nice enough to give us the cover of previews, and it's this helmet. I just draw this helmet, and then Hickman has this idea for the cover. He's like, just draw a helmet, and I drew the first one, and it looked like a Coke can just crushed up. Just like he's like, no. Clean helmet with just a little glass broken. They were very Hickman-y. And sure enough, his aesthetic started helping me out because I was so monstrous and so over the top with everything. And there was no sleekness to it. So his design stuff would start informing my drawings a little bit. And he would show me, he'd give me like really, and Hickman can draw okay, but he would give me some really crappy sketches. And then I would take those sketches and overdraw them, but in the tightest way I could. And he kind of, you can tell there's a couple of splash pages that he planned out. There's one with a fighter pilot that's like falling forward, and he's like modern times, and then he collapses, and by the time he's done time traveling, he's dust. And so that was clearly, it was like panels like this, and the guys falling through the panels, and that was all Hickman, 100% Hickman. And so that's how we worked together on that. And in my early work, and no one's going to know this because it's so long ago and not a lot read, but I was very Seth Fisher-y driven. And Seth Fisher, if you don't know his work, it's a little more mechanical. It's a little more geometrical. But for me, I could look at that and understand the perspective a little better. I wasn't as intimidated to draw really organic body types. And it was like Legos, right? And I could move those Legos around. But as I've gotten better, things become a little more organic. So at the time, I was trying to make a little bit more jump on Red Wing from the mechanical and a little bit less silly, because I draw I have this sense of levity or whatever to my stuff. That's, I call it charming, but it's goofy, so I'll do that in my work. And so like I've tried to pull back on that with Red Wing, but it didn't feel like me 100%. I started realizing the character designs were too close. You can't really tell a lot of the characters apart the way I want it. So then I started studying a lot of like silhouette drawing, like The Simpsons. You can look at any Simpsons silhouette and you'll know who the character is. Well, you can do that if you've got the gusto. Do that with your characters. Go Raphael Grandpa with it. Go bigger, go bulkier, go skinnier, go spindly. And on Manhattan projects, when I was designing those characters, it was the lesson I learned from Red Wing was, okay, this guy's going to have a Stewie head. This guy's going to have this kind of thing. And then if you look at those characters, they all have their own thing. And as an ensemble, they play off of each other together. They act against each other together. And if I would have stuck, to the photographs of these men, they're not all that different. 1940s skinny guys, they all kind of look the same, old scientists. But I was like, okay, this guy's going to have a blockhead and this guy's going to have this. And I tried to stick to the shapes and really push myself in the character design department. Now, I'm still not proud of that work, but there was a jump from the Red Wing stuff. And that's probably the best thing I took away from it. And I started getting a little more organic too. And then the story really, when after 3 or 4 issues, when the tight scripts were gone and we were just doing Marvel style, I started realizing what comic artists do and what writers do more. And the writing part, I would say it's close to plotting. It's closer to plotting to me because I'm having to sit down and bring this thing to life. I'm putting the character act. I'm the actor. I'm the set designer. I'm the clothes designer. I'm the ability to act. I can say the ability to act, and I can draw everything like this, and it would take you out of the story. Or I can say, well, I'm the ability to act. That's 2 different worlds, right? And so, just alone, you just take everything else, the aesthetic and everything out. Just how they're moving the body around is explaining how these lines are being delivered. And I started realizing that so much of the work was on us, And then later on as a writer now, I just knew if I can just get the cool moments in, I can build and maneuver. It gave me confidence to start writing for myself later, 10 years later in my career, which is where I'm at now. So
You were like a sponge, man. You can just look at your early projects, and then when you hit Manhattan projects, the each issue, you felt like you were trying to work on something and bring something new to it and learning. And your narrative storytelling has always been impressive. But as you said, I really feel like you were putting a lot of time and effort into becoming yourself while on that series. And I think that's one of the big reasons that it resonated so well with fans is there were two very distinct voices that were equally as talented with you and Hickman, doing the plotting and then the art, but together you guys were far stronger. Like the sum was much greater than the parts, which is not something that you always see in books. Was that something that you like came very naturally with Hickman when you guys started working together, or did that develop over a number of years? Because I felt like you guys kind of hit a point at some time on Manhattan projects, and it might have been when those solid scripts dried up, where there was a lot more give and take, and I didn't see as many pages that felt like, okay, here's a Hickman page and here's a Pitarra page. It felt like this is a Manhattan projects page.
you can never not give Hickman enough credit. Hickman gets all the credit. He's smart. He's a smart guy, and he would let me do my thing, and then he's got to put it all together. And I'm friends with Nick Dragata, who did East of West, and we work together. We always talk, on the phone or whatever. And it's like, oh, Hickman's so smart. I can't believe he pulled this off, and how he ties it up into a bow. And it's almost like, and I always call it his nickname for me is Papa Hickman. Papa Hickman will take care of it. Papa Hickman's got it. So it's almost like a kid taking baby steps in their art process. And then you got this guy who's smart enough to always catch you. And that's what he was doing. There's a point where like I was just getting like, figure out the JFK assassination. I'm like, shit, and I'm like figuring out like, I guess there'll be a remote control and I guess there'll be this. But when Hickman gets it back, it's like sounds a lot better than whatever stupid thing I had. Remote control bullet for the magic bullet and all this. And so like some of those were like not much. And then, but some of them he had like very specific ideas for. But one thing we did do before we started is we met in person and we plotted out. And I'm still super proud of the first 20. The last 10, I don't love as much, but the first 20, me and Hickman sat down and we picked, okay, this is where this happens. This is where this happens. And I don't want to do spoilers, but like, this is where this guy turns bad. This guy comes back and kills this guy right when he does this. And we knew exactly where we were going. All the tent poles were there. And so how we got there and what we got to do. And it's like, this is where we do the Fermi paradox. This is where we do this. And we sat down and just kind of planned it out and spitballed over coffee for like 3 or 4 hours. And then we went back and we worked on it for the next 4 or 5 years, making it come to life. So yeah, there's definitely a point where they were like, it was more because the first scripts were tight, the first scripts were tight. And then I think at the end, it was a little me too loose without enough direction. The last, 22 through 26, maybe it was a little less tight. And I think I needed a little more structure there. So like, I'm really proud. I will put those first 20, those first 2 hardcovers up against anything. And then like, once it was a little shaky, it just didn't feel like we should keep plowing forward without tight direction. That's just how I feel about it, So we did that miniseries, the Sun and Stars or something like that. And that was all right. And then made me sad because not all the characters survived. But after that, that's how it's not over. I mean, we actually plotted much more out, but it just wasn't, we haven't really got to hook back up. The plan is always to go back to it at some point. And Hickman's always talked about if any of these media things take off, we will. And I would love to go back to it with the ability I have to draw now, and really, because I look at that work and I don't love it. I like the project for what it meant to me and what it is. And I do think I'm proud of the work, but I look at that art and I'm like, man, I draw twice as good as that now, like imagine if I got the Manhattan projects right now, how good I could do it, so. But it's a good time in my life and a great time for my career. So
I'm really glad to hear that you guys still stayed in, you still have stayed in touch and you guys have a good working relationship with each other. Because I had read it years ago, and after we talked, I went back and like was, furiously reading everything that I have in my boxes behind me because I just got done moving. And Manhattan Projects, that I didn't realize it had done so well, but hearing that you aren't so proud of that work should tell people who enjoyed that book just what Ax-Wielder Jon is going to be giving them, because you are taking things to the next level. But I've got to say that book is absolutely impressive as crap. You don't see books solid like that, especially not at that time period. And like Image was just at a faltering block. They just didn't have like a grasp on everything. They had some really great big books, but there were some books that really slipped in under the radar. And I know you ended up on the bestsellers list and got an Eisner nomination and stuff, but I still don't feel like that series gets enough credit, man. Um,
No, I mean the fan reaction was great to it, and I never got to stick the landing. So because Marvel back at the Manhattan Projects, because Red Wing did well, Hickman's like, let's just do Manhattan Projects at Image. Let's not do a Marvel book, and that's why we ended up in Image. And then you will see if you go back and look at your timeline, all the other books come. Like Hickman is a thought leader in the industry. Like people, he does things people follow. You know, when he started doing those circle design covers, go look how many circle design covers have come out since. Like everyone. He's a leader in that sense, and he's a like the coolest thing he's done. And we'll go back to the beginning, and I won't linger on this. Is what kind of new writer shows up at Marvel? You're a new writer. You've been wanting to work there forever. You're busting your ass. He's not making his. He told me. He's told a story before about doing his first Image books and his wife crying when she opened the check, and it wasn't a fucking tears of joy. It was like, we're not going to make it. He gets a Marvel gig. Instead of thinking which pro can I work with, he picks some kid that's never drawn a whole comic book on a message board and makes it for me, because he has a vision that there's this gap in the world for a Seth Fisher type clone guy, right? And so like he had the vision for his book, and he wasn't just going to let Marvel put anybody on it. Now, he changed my life in doing it, but who's got the balls to do that, And he does that. He makes those decisions all the time. And it's like this thing, people doubt you until you show them. And he does that in spades. I mean, the guys, I always say he's a man's man. He's a thought leader, and he's a sweet guy too. And I can never thank him enough. So really, when all the Image titles started jumping over and Epic didn't last, Image had their big boom. One of the first guys, if not the first guy to jump over, was Hickman. So I always say he needs a lot more credit for that. So
Hickman's a very forward thinker, and I always enjoyed his intelligence when it came to his projects. But I didn't always feel like at some points he works with artists that I'm not sure either click with that type of vision and that forward thinking and his involvement in the story, or if he's not able to effectively communicate it with people. But I always felt like when you guys got together, it really did shine. Like I said, a sum greater than the parts. So, I mean, Hickman's wonderful and very intelligent when it comes to things.
no, I agree. I agree with that. I'll be critical of Hickman too. When he has his big idea stuff, like I live in the panels. I care about the way heads turn. If someone's bored, they're picking a nose. Then Hickman's got to play off of it. But if Hickman just does his big plotting stuff, and you're getting like all of these Marvel guys, which they're very, very skilled, but they're like draftsmen almost. There's a dryness that you don't connect to. And then you're getting these big arcs, but you're not feeling the moments like you should. And I understand that critique of Hickman. And I can kind of see from the way the sausage is made, what you said is 100% true, right? He's giving this off. There's editors handing it to 6 different artists to make it happen. He's not intimately as involved. He can't be. And all these artists are doing their own thing. Some guys are just in it for a paycheck and are just turning the work in. Some of them just want to make a beautiful page. Some of them want Einstein picking boogers and doing weird stuff, and then Hickman can play off of that in a beautiful way. And so I understand what you mean. Like when he gets that critique, I laugh, but he's actually really funny. I remember one time someone said, I read an interview with John, and someone said, well, your stuff can be a little dry. And he's like, my stuff can be dry? He was like, what do you mean? And I'm like, he like, you didn't see it, you know what I mean? Or he was just fucking around. But he's like, because in the interview they had said specifically like Manhattan Projects is so funny, you know, but like the humor, it comes from him having to save whatever silly stuff I'm doing, you know, it's not overt. And then sometimes also, like, if you draw, like I said back to the beginning, if you draw romanticized perfect stuff and you're this beautiful draftsman, you're not engaging at the same, good or bad, because there's a space for that. But maybe the character moments don't read as well because everything is so romanticized, so perfect. You know what I mean? And to me, like, Quietly is the greatest example of a guy who's like, people are lumpy. They feel like they're living in the world. They come off the street. They feel ragged, or they feel wiry, or they've, all that stuff. So I can rant about this all day. So we'll never get anywhere in this interview.
So during this time period, it felt like you were really coming into your own artistically. You were starting to bring new elements to your work. You started showing up doing more covers for guys like Oni and Image on other titles. And you also became involved with IDW. You've done a ton of TMNT covers for them, which I do highly recommend checking out, guys. They're freaking gorgeous. There's just some absolutely killer covers. Can you talk a little bit about what you were doing during that period? I saw there were, even on the covers, which is interesting. I don't see this a lot. It felt like with every cover you would kind of see and isolate elements like this worked really well, or I don't like this element. And then when you would come back to your next cover, I would see you like really concentrating on different elements that really set your work apart. Can you talk a little bit about your artistic growth and process during that time period?
I think I'm always pushing myself, and like, this is a Hickman critique. He's like, you always got a new pen. Why don't you just limit yourself to 1 microns? But I would like buy dip pens and I would try them out, and then I would never master them, and I would be too sloppy, right? And then I'd try something else out. I'd try a brush pen. I'd try this and that, and eventually, I in all the covers, you're right there. Like, a lot of them were connecting covers. People saw the detail. A lot of editors like, oh, you draw detailed. Can you do 4 connecting covers? And it makes it easy for them because they don't need to go to 4 different variant artists. They just make me do it, right? And so I would like those kind of challenges, and it was always a challenge and a challenge. And like, honestly, on those IDW covers, it wasn't even about the money. I didn't invoice them for like 2 or 3 years, and I had go back and be like, hey guys, you got to pay me for 20 covers. Like, it took forever. And they're like, what? That editor's not even here anymore. I would just not invoice for, because they didn't pay all that wonderful. They were okay, but it was really about, again, playing with my toys. I love the Ninja Turtles, so I told them, like, and I've never, knock on wood, I've never had to like ask for a gig. I've never said like, please hire me for this. But the Turtle guys, Bobby Curnow, he like reached out, and then I was able to build a relationship with him by doing a few covers. But I am always trying to push myself. And then inversely, like, Hickman's advice was pick one thing and get good at it and master it. And so on Ax-Wielder Jon, I threw everything out, and I only used 0.005 and 0.003 microns to ink everything. That's it. I can't get any crazier. It's what I originally inked with when I was trying to break in. And I've done that nonstop on Ax-Wielder. And on top of that, because I wanted the book to be like as best I can make it, each panel, like, a lot of it's third tier. So like, here's an example, like, each panel is on its own 11 by 17. So every page is, let me see, I got this one here too. Like, so every panel is its own board turned sideways. And I did this for a couple of reasons, right? Like, and then if it's like, if it's 2/3 of a page, like this is a 2/3 of a page shot, but it's like 2 boards turned sideways, stayed together, a double page splash. So the whole book is drawn at 17 inches wide and 33 inches tall for each board. So I knew I was going to do this the best I could, and I was going to be completely controlled and not be sloppy, because I know that I'm known for having a goofy element to my stuff, but I wanted parts of this to be dead serious, and I wanted it to look cool. Like, a big thing about being the guy that, and I love indie guys like Crumb, and there's so many great artists. There's an artist named Ian Laurie I love, who's just like, he draws like a demented child. I love his stuff. We're buddies. But there's something about those guys that are in those panels that they when they do a pinup, it's not that romanticized cool shot, right? It's like this lived in. It's got its own language. Like Ian's stuff, it's like he draws a horror story and you're kind of scared, it's kind of off and it's good. It adds to it. It's 100% great. But I knew that I had this goofy thing, right? This silly thing, this levity. And there are parts of John that he needs to look like a badass. He needs to look cool. And so I knew I needed to work and rein in some of that. And that was going to be, don't use a big brush pen and be lumpy with it. Be refined, draw it as best you can. So the way this story is absorbed is the way you intend it, and not as goofy. The goofy things got to wash away for me to hit the beats I wanted in Ax-Wielder. If that makes sense.
No, it
I mean,
absolutely.
there's still goofy stuff in it, right? But I think the overall thing you pull out is when this guy's mad, I want you to believe he's mad. When he's squishing people and killing them, and then if you can hit those notes, the softer notes, like a musical instrument, you've hit these hard things. You got this big alpha male. Well, you got to put something really soft in there to make it to make it balanced, right? Otherwise, it's just a drum beat. But I want to play a symphony, in my head. So putting these things in there was a big idea for me. Like the idea of balance and how and not just it's in everything. It's aesthetically too, right? If you have this big manly thing, you better have some soft things visually to counter it, or it's just that Simon Bisley note, right? Which is fine, but can you balance it? And then what people really love is balance. Like people really love that. It's yin and yang. It's what people are attracted to. And so whenever I started drawing him, people would react. My early sketches, I would get this big reaction, and I was like, it's the same as anything else I draw. But there was something to it where the juxtaposition of how I was playing with things was getting a better reaction. Is the best way I can say it without spoiling the book. So
It's not just a better reaction. I feel like going back to that Invincible story that you were talking about with the Ducks, where they hit him and they fell, and you kind of made that call. And I'm just like in my head when you were talking about that, and you were showing me the way that you composed your panels. I was thinking of this scene where John throws the skull and he hits the guy in the back of the head and he falls and he breaks his neck. And you're like, you get that single beat of brevity where he's like awkwardly falling and he hits and he breaks his neck and it's all kind of silly and awkward looking. And you're like, oh man, that poor bastard, his neck's broken. And then the next shot is like John's foot crushing his skull in like graphic detail. And you're like, okay, you have truly perfected that loud, quiet beat. And hearing how you composed the book, that makes a lot of sense. I'm hearing a lot of stuff that lines up. I don't know if you know who Bernie Krigstein is, Master Race and stuff from the 50s.
yeah, I do. I saw you just did a big video on him too. I started that one and a couple other ones because I didn't know your channel before you reached out, but I was like, God, this channel's great. You're doing your research, man. I was like, as soon as I started clicking on stuff, I was like, I'm too intimidated. I was like, I'm out of my element in this interview. So 'cause I know what I know, but I only know what I know because I'm hard focused on the stuff I love. But your wealth of knowledge is way bigger than mine. So yeah, I've watched some videos on the Craig Steen stuff before, and then but go ahead because it's always good if the viewers have it. So
His view of the page was absolutely revolutionary, and it basically almost got him kicked out of the industry, but it is what built the halls of comic history which we now walk down. And he began to see every panel on every page as a singular piece of art, which then had to be juxtaposed into another secondary piece of illustration, which was viewed as a page. And when I read your stuff, that is something that is absolutely evident. That's why I bring up Mobius and stuff and the European comics. I really do think that you have a much more forward and intelligent thought process when it comes to storytelling in your art. And Ax-Wielder Jon is an absolutely evolutionary step in your work from what I've seen. So it's really cool. Thank you so much for showing us the original pages. I had no idea it was composed like that. And that's really interesting that you compose like that as well. Is that because of just something that you came up with, or have you seen other illustrators doing that? Did you pull that idea from somewhere?
I'm a pretty big art collector, and if you like Milo Manara pages on some of the European strip stuff was 17 inches wide, but they're about this wide. The way I looked at it was I wasn't sure. I knew I wasn't going to a publisher with John, and I knew that there was a great moment in the middle of this book where readers would be. I think if I knew do my job right, where readers would be hooked, and it's a pretty cool reveal. And I thought since a phone is this shape, that's 1/3 of a page that if I tried to paste this out, and it's also the size of a screen, so it feels cinematic. If I was going to release it as a build-up, I would drop the panels, which I still can as a web comic. And let's say if I'm doing this as a crowdfunder, and I am, then if people can't access the next book, maybe I'll release up to a certain point for free on Webtoons or something, and everyone could read it perfectly, catch up, and then they'll be hooked. And then I'll have the first book ready and the second book ready. And part of this is an aside, but building this for myself, since I put like $25,000 into this book so far, paying the colorist, paying for the covers, and I've taken no money. I've basically, I haven't made a page rate, so for the last year working on it. So if I had what my page rate would have been, it's even more. But I own the property now, and I could sell the property, or I can go to a publisher and be like, it costs you nothing. It costs you nothing to publish this, and you can just have a small percent of the publishing, not of the property. Instead of me giving that part away, well, I have all the juice now, And if the book is good, in which I think it is, then I have all. Then you take the power away, and you're not being controlled by a little carrot on a stick. Like I'm not gonna have someone my passion project be controlled for me for a few $100s. I'll sell my truck if I have to. I'll sell my original art. I'll eat ramen, before I give this away. And it was given to me at such an important time when my daughter was sick. And I'm a big Flex Mentallo. Have you ever read Flex Mentallo? Like Morrison and Quietly?
Yes, and I was gonna say we'll hit on your Doom Patrol issue that you did with Way too, because I thought that was very, very interesting. But yes, I am. Go ahead, big fan.
Well, in that book, the protagonist, he creates a Flex when he's a kid, and then later on he becomes like a drugged out, superstar. And Flex Mentallo shows up and says, in his world, and says, "I'll show you how to be a real man, kid." And it's like his hero saving him. And when my daughter was sick, it was like I needed something to do. This idea came to me, and it was like I'm getting to manifest this hero that came to me in a time I needed one. And now, if it becomes successful, or it actually will be successful because I'm going to make it successful one way or the next, then he is going to provide for me. So then I did create a hero in this really hermetic, crazy way. And so like now it's Flex Mentallo, like a spiritual work for me, which is like, it kind of is, it kind of is. And like, did something I read in fiction manifest itself in the real world for me? Now, am I going to let somebody own that to offer me $300 a page because I'm worried about making ends meet? Or am I going to sell stuff or scrape by or whatever, and then make it the way I want? And then, and worse, if I sell it, and there are companies that do this, and if it's not selling well, then they won't let you finish it. I'm not going to finish this book, like I'm going to make it my way. And then I'll do the Hickman thing. If you think it's silly or ridiculous, then I'll make it, and then you'll change your mind, or if you don't like it, you don't have to buy it, which is fine too. But I don't think that's going to happen. So, I won't let it happen. So, and even if I do make this thing, I could still go sell it, if I wanted to. So for me, it was like, the idea has a lot of deep meaning. And going back to it, it's just I'm getting to play in the aesthetic realm of like muscle tech, which is what I consider Masters of the Universe, where and there's like this, like I'm getting to play with my He-Man toys and break them again, right? And I'm getting, you know what I mean? I'm getting to do it on the page, and you just think, oh, you draw so well, it's so acceptable, but it's no different than what I was doing as a kid. And so I'm getting to live my youth, but also provide for my family, hopefully, and take my craft to the next level. And I'm writing and drawing something for the first time in my life. It's too important for me to not have it my way. So, and I got to give a shout out to my editor, Chris Stevens, and he's done a bunch of big books, and he's won some Eisners for the books he's put together. And I knew I wanted to work with him. And so once I got this script going, and I knew I needed somebody to get in there with me with the beats and the lines and the bolds and all this stuff. Your wife can only do so much. Your friends only want to hear so much from you. You know, they don't want to go, oh, what about this? And what about this? We'll pay somebody to do it and get the guy you want instead of just a random editor that gets thrown your way that has their own ideas about stuff. I want someone where I get the final say, not the editor. So pay the editor, and now I get the final say. You know what I mean? And that's so I did everything I wanted to. I hired the colorist. I wanted Mike Garland. We got a Eisner Award-winning letterer, Farron Delgado. I got Dos Pastoras, who's a Spanish master painter, on the hardcovers. Eventual softcover, Frank quietly signed up, and loosely talking. I'm smoothing Jeff Darrow out. I'm smoothing. He called me the other day. Jeff Darrow called me, and so I'm trying to work on him. He's a busy guy. You know, he's super famous, but I got him lightly interested. He might be in the mix. So I'm putting everything I can into it, like financially and physically and mentally, pushing to the max. So I'm excited about it.
This is why I was really excited about reaching out and talking to you, man. I respect your drive, your hustle, and I did want to point out to any viewers that are watching this, there will be a Zoop campaign coming up for Ax-Wielder Jon. I'll have an announcement on the page and stuff. If you guys have been watching the channel for a while, you know that I was approached by the creators of Zoop back when they first launched the entire crowdsourcing idea, which is basically built around doing Kickstarter for comic books. Loved the idea, but I was very weary of throwing much weight behind them until I saw a physical product. And there is a lot of people out there who make art, who are amazing artists and amazing writers and absolutely deplorable fucking businessmen, and can't put a project together with a shotgun to their head. And one of the things that I absolutely was blown away by is your professionalism. I think you took a lot away from Jonathan Hickman as far as forward thinking and planning and knowing how to approach things in a very intelligent and manageable way to go about stuff. So if you're thinking about backing this project, I cannot recommend it enough. And I do kind of want to talk about, I don't know if the emotional resonance of the book is, I get the feeling it might be unique to me, but I'm hoping it's really not, because the more I found out about this book, my daughter also spent almost 2 months in the NICU when she was born. And there is a sense of hopelessness and despair and the not being able to do anything for your child. Fear does not begin to describe that emotion. So having a hero born from that darkness really hit me. And I had no idea about any of this when I was first reading your book. Can you talk just a little bit about, you described kind of manifesting Jon as a way to save yourself, and I hear you willing to throw yourself 100% behind this project. Can you talk a little bit about what Jon means to you? Not to sound cheesy, but can you talk a little bit about what he means to you? Because there is, I think, an emotional resonance to the book that hits far beyond the white knuckle action beats that one might expect.
I think when Dos Pastores did the painted cover, and I don't know if you can edit it in or share it on your social. And I haven't shared it yet. We were going to wait for a website release or something, but I wrote him and I said, for me, this is what I wanted for Jon. I wanted him to be stoic. I wanted him, like my dad in the morning, he's a construction worker. Every morning he gets up, he's tired. My mom's yapping, the kids are yapping, but he's got like that 1,000-yard stare. And it doesn't matter if you're an axe wielder. It doesn't matter if you're an electrician. It doesn't matter if you're a stay-at-home dad. You want your coffee. You're stealing your mind for the day. And I wanted that expression. And I think about Jon, or like you're carrying all the groceries from the car in a comical way. You're doing it because it's you. You're putting the team on your back. That is the exact statement I had when I was designing Jon. That's what he's got all these skulls that he's fallen in love with, these heads, and he's lost his mind and he's crazy. I I mean, what he means to me is he's like a hero manifested, but my dad's that hero for me in real life. So there's a huge play on, and also like my father-in-law, who's like captain in the military and super, I'm taking all the men in my lives and plopping them in the roles of, and John's this guy who's got to learn to be more than a crazy killer, right? That's his journey. And for me, I have to learn as a dad to be a dad, right? I've been this guy that sits in this room for the last 20 years, drawing away very selfishly. Well, I've got 2 little girls now. I've got to get out there and be part of it. And like, John's mimicked me in this sense, and his story is mimicking me, because he's got a journey where he thinks he's this one type of guy, but he's got to be something else. That's going to be his big arc. My thing is, I think I'm going to just get to hide in my room and work on Ax-Wielder Jon when I really got to be a better dad, right? And so there's this yin and yang thing for me, and it's so weird that, I mean, I don't know what else to say. It's weird, but if you listen to Alan Moore talk or Grant Morrison talk, it's not as weird. But I love the hermetic stuff, and it's so cool. But like having the Flex Mentallo thing mirror like what happened in fiction, mirror, and you're like, that's weird. But then also literally having what you write mirror. But then also that's what art is. Like Hickman got asked a question about why he was bringing up father-son dynamic so much in his work, and Hickman's answer was like, I guess I'm going through something, right? It just keeps coming back in, right? And so like Mobius says this, artists interpret reality, right? And it's this immediate reality for me, and I always took that as an aesthetic as far as drawing, right? Like I put it in my hand, I've spit it out, and it's been computed through whatever this is, through my limited craft, and now this is the new language of this is this fractured language. But if it's consistent, you'll believe it. That's the beautiful thing about illustration. A child can do a stick figure story and you'll believe it. It can be super successful. But if that child then tries to mimic somebody, the problem with art teachers, by the way, because I'm I degree in art, is everyone will harp on the fact that that looks real, that trace thing. But what they were really doing right was doing the stick figures right when it was all their own language. But you now are sending them down the path of craft. There's always self, and you can never, when you're honest to yourself, you're always right. It's everyone loves you, you're genuine, it's perfect. And then there's craft. Now, craft, you're going down like the Alex Raymond road. You're going down like the very best of the very best, right? But you can just be you. You can just be Ian Laurie, that artist I talked about, who just draws like a demented child and tell your stories. And so I'm an art collector, and I collect all kinds of weird art. But you can either be yourself and throw craft out. And this is where Jack Kirby said, like, Jack Kirby has a great speech, and he gave it in the 70s to all the aspiring artists at San Diego Comic-Con. And he's like, do what you can, draw the best you can. But there's a lot of people that draw better than me. They draw better hands, they draw better arms, they draw better legs, but they don't get the reaction that I get. And it's because he's drawing in his own language. And so I always only took art in those terms as drawing. But now writing, I'm watching my life mimic itself in this story without me trying. It's literally going to happen. It's like I'm manifesting a piece of me. And that's when I realized it was too valuable. And also I realized that when I do my weird stuff sometimes I'll get people's script and I'll be going off and I'll do this or I'll do this. I'm like, what if they had that meaning to their story and I'm not respecting it? You know what I mean? Because I have a deeper meaning. I have a deeper appreciation for the writing now. It isn't just like, oh, Nick Pitarra's fun time. It's like, no, this might have been something where I needed to really think about how it was delivered, like I am with Jon. Because with Jon, it's the first time I'm getting outside of the panel for the first time and thinking about how it's being absorbed instead of working on how well it's drawn or how meticulous are the little sight gags. I'm thinking about how the reader is taking it in for the first time. And I've never illustrated a comic book thinking that. I always thought my job was in that box, in the next box, and how those boxes connected and the timing. And I love all that about comics. But I never really thought, when someone picks this up, how would they read that? What's the frame narration doing? Is it setting up this? Is this pulling this out? And Hickman thinks that way. And that's what I've learned. And what Jon means to me is that somehow life is imitating art. And it's a weird It's a weird thing. And there's a lot of John that's me, right? I got to learn to be better. I got to learn to, and that's why they too, like his thing is he comes across these skulls and he's mentally messed up and he's thinks he loves these skulls and it's this weird, story, but it's a challenge. You got to challenge yourself. So for me, he sharpens his axes. I sharpen my pencil. I draw bigger. I draw tinier. I draw better. And that's the game. And then I hope if you create it, the people will come. I hope so.
We've talked about Flex Mentallo a couple of times. Can you talk a little bit about Doom Patrol? I absolutely love Gerard Way, and you guys ended up doing Weight of the World, I believe was what it was called. I have never actually gotten a chance to check that out. That's in this like little blind spot for me that I have for comics where I had to quit reading because of my daughter and I had no money. How was it getting able to finally work on Flex Mentallo? Was that intimidating or fun?
It was a crazy, and back to the weirdness of it all. When I was in the NICU with my daughter, Flex Mentallo came to me. Like Ramon Villalobos said he was turning down a Flex gig. And I was like, and he's a buddy of mine. And I was like, you're turning down a Flex gig, you're an idiot. And one of my rules is I try not to ever solicit for work. I don't want to pester editors. If they want me, they'll reach out. So I never ask for work. And I was like, Ramon, I never ask for work. But if you turn down that gig, you better tell them Nick Pitarra is interested. And he did. And then they wrote. And I was like, boom. And then that's the Flex Mentallo centric issue of the new Gerard Way run. And it's a cool story. I got to work with Gerard Way, and there's a guy named Jeremy Lambert that co-wrote with him. And Andy Curry was the editor. Tamara Bonvillain was the colorist. And it was cool, man. I like Flex, like it was so weird, but like in the middle of this thing, like not only that, like it was one of my time of need, and we needed money too, like here's Flex Mentallo, literally my favorite character. In the cool. So actually I'll show you how, like this is the cover to #1 by Quietly. You're gonna check that out. So that's the issue 1 cover by Frank Quietly and Flex Mentallo. It's pretty cool, right? So yeah, man, I like he's my favorite. Here's the ruff on the back. This is how good Quietly is. You probably can't see this, it's probably reflecting everywhere. But like these are his roughs, and look at the irises on this eye. Who does this for his roughs? Like he's crazy, right? So like Flex is my favorite character, right? He's my favorite character. And then I get the gig while I'm this, and I get the idea for John, and it's like it's weird. It's weird. It's one of those things, like Alan Moore says, one of those things you're like, oh, that's kind of weird. Put that away. And then after a while, you're just like, oh, this is too many coincidences. And I'm a collector of art, like I said, and this cover came to me, and there's another big collector, and he's a bigger Quietly collector than me, and he wrote me the day this showed up, and I did not know this was coming to the house. My art rep had it for years, and he just sent it to me, and then he texted me and said, hey, look what showed up on my door today. And somebody he had purchased the rough, but I hadn't talked to this art collector in like a year. And so the rough for Flex Mentallo showed up at his house, and the original showed up for mine. And I was like, what are the odds that he showed up in both of our houses the same day? I'm telling you, dude, it's crazy. I mean, if I still smoked weed and all that stuff, which I don't anymore, like I had to cut all that out as an adult, as a father, but I would, I'm almost glad it all happened when I was like, completely sober. It doesn't even make sense, So yeah, Flex Mentallo is my hero, and he's the man of muscle mystery too. He's a magician. It's almost like he popped out of the pages in a sense. So pretty cool.
That is insane. Thank you so much for sharing that original art. That was absolutely gorgeous. That image has been burned into my mind for years, and I remember that series as being just absolutely elusive because they couldn't reprint it because they got sued. You also did some work for Immortal Hulk. Can you talk a little bit about how you ended up getting involved with Immortal Hulk? That series was it was the 750th legacy numbering, and there was a bunch of different people, kind of a jam issue or whatever you want to call it. But your stuff really stood out, man. I felt like you were kind of going back to that drawing a lot more on Seth again. I saw a lot more of that like Kirby-esque approach to the Hulk. How did that all come about for you, man?
They just wrote and they said, "Hey, you want to do 10 pages of the Hulk?" And I'm not sure. I'm friends with Chris Burnham. I'm not sure if they offered it to Chris Burnham first and he turned it down. I never know with Burnham because he gets gigs before I do, and then when he can't, I'll get the scraps or something. But and he's Chris Burnham's a fantastic artist and a good buddy of mine. But they Marvel wrote and asked, and I was like, I'd love to work on the Hulk, and and it was a sequence all in Hulk's mind, and a lot of it hadn't been established, so I had to figure out some of that stuff, and I put Easter eggs throughout nobody really knows it, but if you go on the pages, when there's broken mirrors in the environment, and every time, like if you walk by a mirror, it'd be like Richard Corbin's Hulk, or if it's a reflection of Hulk, it's not my Hulk anymore. It's like Jack Kirby's Hulk. So, and I would hide like in the trash, I would put Kirby's name, or on that first splash page, if you ever go look, there's a tree and I'll never be able to spell Kirby with my fingers, so I don't know why I'm doing this, but there's a tree with twisted branches, and some are up here and some are back here. But if you look at it flatly, it shows Kirby. And then in that panel, on the broken glass will be a Kirby reflection. And I did that with all the big Hulk artists, like whoever they were. And so I did that. That was like, I always do little silly Nick Pitarra side jokes all the time. So, but it worked because it's like in his mind, and it was a cool story. And then it was super cool. I don't know what's spoiler or not, but having him rip out a Banner's mouth and at the end and all that was awesome. I read the script and I was like, this is incredible. So it was cool. Working with Al Ewing's fun. And although he blocks me on Twitter for some reason, so I don't know why that is. We don't follow each other. I follow him, he doesn't follow me. But I'll probably block botted by him or something. But it was fun working with him. That was cool. And it was I could always say I worked on the Hulk, and it was a big issue. So I'm happy about that.
So I know that you've been concentrating mostly on Ax-Wielder Jon. You've still got pages to get done for that project. When we were talking before the interview started, I'm not going to spoil anything for you guys because I'm not ruining this one. This is way too good of a fucking book, and you're going to have to buy it, pay for it. But you were talking about the second book and kind of the arc for Jon, and for anybody who reads that book and you want to go back and listen to this interview, we have kind of given a couple of little clues as to what might be coming for Jon and his evolution and what he's doing and becoming. Is there anything outside of Ax-Wielder Jon that you are thinking of that's even on your radar, or is that just kind of where you're narrowing your view to and concentrating on for the foreseeable future?
Well, I've got a series in Limbo with Jonathan Lehman, Leviathan at Image, and we did that. And then my daughter got sick, and then Image canceled it. But we've got the fourth issue done, and then the fifth issue needs to be done, and we can get the trade out. So I've got to stop and do that at some point. I told John I would get to it the next year, but it's kind of like a limbo project right now. It's like, but I don't like things hanging, so I got to finish that fifth issue in Leviathan. That's coming up at some point. But really, like, Jon is planned out. Like, I know the exact story for Jon all the way through. It's not something I'm winging. You know what I mean? Like, it's actually 5 years worth of work because there's 3 books for this story arc and then 2 ending books. And I can't say what they are because I'll spoil the thing. But we'll watch the barbarian grow old and try to get to Valhalla in the end of the days. You know what I mean? If he doesn't get killed, getting sent there. One of the two is going to happen. So I got that. I mean, I could probably say this. It's not that big of a deal, but I've got a really good reaction to Ax-Wielder Jon art. And like Mark Millar wrote me the other day, he just sent me money signs. He said, "Nick, you interested in working together, money signs?" But I don't know if that's gonna happen or not. We're loosely talking about it. So maybe one day that'll happen. But I really want to get Jon done and not get tempted. But money is always tempting, so you got to fight that urge. So maybe I'll do something with him down the line. And then I've had a couple other, the Manhattan Project's media stuff is always on the cusp, or there's always something buzzing. And if that ever goes off, me and Hickman have always talked about starting the next arc for that. And I told Jon that if that happens, I'd love to go back to that. But I really want like Ax-Wielder Jon to be my. I talked to Jeff Darrow about this. Like, you're making a brand for you. Like, Darrow could work on any property he wants, and he's like, why don't you work on Deadpool? Or why don't you work on this? And he's like, I'm making my thing. He's Shaolin Cowboy or Magnola's. Like, I really want to put my name behind a brand and put the character out first and not pepper on other things that I don't necessarily own, then no part of me wants, but I mean, at Image, I do own my stuff, but excuse me. So I don't have any qualms about finishing that or going back to that. But like the mainstream stuff, I'm not as interested in, and I can get really passionate about this, but I don't think the rates are fair. They haven't gone up in years. The way I have too many friends that beg for raises and get $10 or $15 raises after 5 or 6 years. And part of that, man, like I'll always work at Marvel and DC, love them, but the system is not set up to help out artists, and I'm not a big fan. And I will promise you, if you go work at Image and you bust your ass, you'll be doing way better than that, than $280 a page or $310 a page or whatever they're nickel and diming you with. And that's like those rates in comparison. Howard Chaykin in the late 70s wanted that contract to where you pencil ink a page, you get $300 a page. There's guys now not making that. I'm friends with them, and that's in the 70s. And inflation's gone up and everything else, and jobs are less, and pages, the page quality demand is much higher than back then. Like they want us to do master level stuff at all times. So we're not able to turn the pages out. So there's just all these factors that hurt. There's no retirement, there's no benefits. And I'm just not a fan. I'm not a fan, but I love playing with those toys. It's like I'll play with some Hulk action figures, but there's not interested in anything long term there. Like I want to build my own stuff, and see where it goes.
I respect that, and thank you for breaking kayfabe. So, as they say, a lot of people look on the outside of the industry and they see big names, they see guys that we really respect, and they get boiled down to bylines that, and they get equated to these larger than life superhero characters that they're writing with, and you see them as Wonder Woman and Superman must be doing fine monetarily. I mean, we never see him worrying about a place to live, so you just kind of think that everybody is doing fine and everybody is wonderful. But that's the important thing. Historically, I think that's going to be the big important thing about Image, is showing that if you are willing to put in the time and the effort, and with a little bit of luck and a lot of talent, you really can build something of your own. And I respect you taking that to what I see as the next evolutionary step of the medium, which is directly creating comic books, not for your fans, with your fans. And I was wondering, I know that Ax-Wielder Jon comes from such a personal place. You've expressed, a very unwillingness, which I respect the hell out of, by the way, to give it up, which is not necessarily just based in a monetarily, motivated place, but also as he means something to you. Can you talk a little bit about what brought you to make the decision from moving with Image, Marvel, DC, the big three, the guys that everybody, historically has been fighting to get to doing your own thing with crowdsourcing?
Well, there's a lot of one. It's the changing landscape, and to be honest, I've never pitched Ax-Wielder Jon, so I don't know if I could go publish it anywhere. Who knows if anyone wants it? I'll just leave that up to chance. But I would say that the way I see it is this: I had some ideas like 5 years ago. James Herron, the artist James Herron. He does Ultra Mega now, but he did Rumble. I think he's amazing. I think he's absolutely amazing. He's rep by my same rep, Felix Comic Art. When he was working on Ultra Mega, I had a brief exchange with the guys at Skybound. A lot of people are aping James's style online, like a lot of people. He's hugely influential. He's got tons of followers. When he tweets something out, 100,000 people are sharing it. 20,000 people are sharing it. Like just tons of people. Every artist you meet loves him. Like we went to Japan together, me, him, and some guys, and with the Felix crew, and Kim Jung-ji we met over there, and he was a huge. Kim Jung-ji's the guy that does that automatic drawing stuff. He's super famous. He's a huge James Herron's fan, right? So I asked my art rep, and this is long-winded, I apologize. Like, why, when his first book, when this ultra mega book comes out, if people are paying $1,000 a page or $50,000 to get the complete issue, whatever they're paying, he's got all these fans in line. Wouldn't they pay what, 1/5 the price of a page to have all the pages in an artist edition? Why can't we make an artist edition first? Why does he have to be dictated by the whims of, comic book shops and strip malls that are cash strapped because comic book, publishing is completely messed up? And then they can only bank on a George Perez artist edition because they know that's a commodity that he's gonna. But I'm telling you, you could snap a finger and say your artist edition worthy just by doing it. You could do that right now, and he's got so much heat on him where he could sell those books. Like, I just believe you could. And why are we waiting for approval for things? Like, why is he waiting for approval? Why don't you take the heat on that first issue before it even drops? Because you got all that momentum and all that press going into it. And why wouldn't you just offer the artist edition for $100 right then, and not at the end of his career when it doesn't benefit him, when he's 80 years old, like, make him a legend now. Like, why can't you do that? And it made no sense that they weren't doing something like that. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But if you think about it, your limited exposure, and I love stores, and with Ax-Wielder Jon, stores are getting 50% off and every book they order gets a free remark in it, so they can make sure they sell it, right? Like, I love stores, but some people don't go to stores. I want to get to everyone on the planet, like, not just everyone that walks in the strip mall shops, and more, I don't know how bad it is, but some close, some don't close. And then that foot traffic in a store, I'm limited to what this one guy can afford to order, instead of bringing it to everybody. Right. And I just don't see why that makes sense when there's so much power on the creator. And what happened with the online media is we all become our own entity, good or bad. Like, it's like, if no one follows you, then but if people do follow you, and I'm not that guy, a lot of people don't follow me, but you can make something. And so on the Ax-Wielder Jon idea, for me, I was like, if I go first, and I got some other buddies that want to write and draw their own stuff, and I build this email list up, and we've got over 400 emails now, and we just started, so we're hopefully we get it to 1,000, right? Then when Ax-Wielder Jon's done and fulfilled, you go next, right? Or we'll go back to the James Herron idea. Don't let James go first. Let Paul Pope go first. Why don't we have a Paul Pope artist edition? And then let James go. And then let James Jean go. And all the guys at Felix Rep. And then get this, one caveat, all you egomaniac artists under Felix Comic Art. I started Felix Comic Art with Felix, so I can say this. Because I went first. I went first with Felix Comic Art. Not everyone else. They had to see it. And the way I got them all to come over is I said, look, you guys draw better than me. Why do I make more money than you? Because Felix is better. Come on over. And sure enough, they started coming over, right? If we made one agreement, if all 40 of us with our huge social media followings combined promoted the hell out of that first artist edition. And then what happens when James goes? Boom. We got that base. Then what happens when whoever else, Stephen Green goes? Let's say Stephen does as big his name as Paul Pope. And then what happens when Nick Pitarra goes? We plan it out. We keep building our own base. We build our own thing. We bring it to the fans. We make sure that the stores are more than happy because they're going to get it at our cost, because we love stores, right? We don't want to make anything off stores. We want stores to make it, and we'll do a sketch in theirs so they can even make an extra $100, right? Guarantee it. Why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we doing it? We aren't doing it because one person can't afford to fund a book, because one of us don't have the balls to do it, right? So with Zoop, like, I had a chance to be featured on Kickstarter. They reached out, and that's a huge spot. You make a lot of money that way. With Zoop, why I'm going with them, and trust me, I'm wary too, and I'm as nervous as you can get, but they were the first ones that had a model that made sense to me, that they will fulfill, and they will do the customer service, and they will set up I know I set this interview up myself by tweeting it out, or your buddy got to you, but they're setting up other interviews for me, right? So like, now I can sit home and create. When this book is turned into them, they're going to deal with the printer, they're going to ship it out, they're going to take their cut 25% to do all of that, which is cool. Kickstarter would take 10%, and you would still get charged 5 or 6% credit card fees. So it's actually closer to 15%. Zoop takes that 5 or 6% out of their 25%, so theirs is closer to 19%, right? It is not the same. Now, of course, they don't have the user base and they don't have the footprint. But how many people are going to really casually buy my book? It's going to be what I drive. So I'm trying to drive as much as I can there. And then I created a brand, Kuroshi Comics, which means to die at your drafting table to me, right? Kuroshi in Japanese means to die from overwork. So I thought the coolest thing ever would be, hey, death from overwork would be awesome. And so like I have to create a little brand over there, but now I got an email list and I'm going to do a campaign that I'm putting my everything, all my money and all my time and all my effort into for the last year and a half. Now the next guy goes, it ain't so scary, right? The next guy goes and it ain't so scary. And so I don't have the Felix guys doing it. I wish I did, but I'm going to do it myself, and then I'm going to build that email list up as much as I can and make sure the customers are happy with the product I do, hire the best editor to make sure I don't put out a complete turd, hire the best colorist to hide my lines if you don't like those. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to do, I have a team put together that if I went to Marvel or DC, they'll be like, oh, we can't afford that colorist, right? Or we can't afford that guy. Like I don't like being told that. Like I'm drawing things 33 inches tall and you're not going to give me the colorist I want. You know what I mean? What do you mean? Like that's unacceptable. I do not accept that. So I will do it myself. Right. And so I don't know if it's the right model. I don't know, but I do think that nothing stops me from taking this to Image when it's done. Like when it's all said and done, I can go take a softback Frank Quietly's cover on it, in 2 years and let release it under my Image catalog. Why wouldn't I build this thing up, show it off as much as I can and test this model out? And that's what it is. I'm testing it out, and I'm not saying I'm against taking the product. I might go to Dark. Like I love the Dark Horse hardcovers, the way they handle Jeff stuff, Jeff Darrow. Like I would love Shaolin Cowboy books. Have you seen the new hardcovers? How they're really beautiful. They're not that expensive, $25 or so in each volume. I would love to have a matching pair of Ax-Wielder Jon books at Dark Horse. Like I'd be tickled. And so I'm not against that. But as of right now in the industry, I'm not going to write Dark Horse, show them my rough idea, or show them even the PDF you have with 80 pages done and whatever else is going on with it. I'm not interested in anyone telling me no. If you're interested in it, obviously write me, but I'm not interested in having anyone tell me what to do. I hired the editor that tells me what to do, and I'm a grown man. If you spent as much as I did, which is, I do a page a day, but my pages a day are one panel a day. Right. So if you spend 2 pages a day or 2 pages a week for a year and a half, doing it, if you spent that kind of time and love and more than me, maybe, but I don't think you're going to beat my Eisner Award winning editor, Chris Stevens. And I don't think you're going to beat the colorist I put together. And so let's find out, right? Put your money where your mouth is. And I'm excited about it. I know I sound cocky, but I really, and I don't even mean that. What I mean is I put everything into it and I need people's help, like if you think this sounds cool, if you think the art sounds cool, I need you guys to go sign up at Zoop, go sign up for that early email list. I'm giving away, I'm doing some special things. So if everyone who signs up on the email list before the book comes out, they're going to get little cool things. I got some beautiful paintings that I want to do some Marvel Masterpiece cards for, like since it's the 30-year anniversary for those. So I'm going to try to make those, and they're not that expensive to make. So I was thinking about giving those away. There's some things I want to do that I've been talking to Zoop about, but so for me, I went with Zoop because I knew I want fans to know the book is going to be done when this thing ends, the campaign ends. I've got 18 pages left to draw. That's 2 months away. The book will be done. I get 10 pages about a month done. So it'll be finished. So the book will be finished when the campaign ends. I have distribution lined up. I have a whole team for customer service and everything else lined up. I literally did not take the Kickstarter deal, which would have been a fantastic deal for me because I wanted fans to know that this book was being made. I made the advanced PDF because I wasn't going to do 3 pages and pitch it to you. I wanted to show it to you so you could read it and see it's a real thing so we could have this conversation. I'm taking it as seriously as I can while still keeping a roof over my family's head, barely, but I'm trying,
And that's why I really, really, really wanted to do a good piece with you tonight and get into things and share more about your career and give a real glimpse into who you are as a professional and a creative and an illustrator, which I think all very well describe you And it's because you are so professional and so well thought out that I think you exemplify what I see as the future of where comics are going. People say that comic books are dead, and that is absolute malarkey. I've heard that since I was born. Oh, the industry is going to die. Oh, the industry is dead. And the more I read about the industry, it's like, oh yeah, well they said that in the 50s and then the 70s and then the 80s and then the 90s. No, the industry is not dead. It's changing. And with Zoop, it's really awesome to hear you bring up an artist's edition because I think Scott Dunbier was even involved.
Yeah.
But there was an artist's edition that just went on Zoop and was fully funded. I am ecstatic to see people like that start getting more exposure because as you pointed it out, it's like, why are we waiting 40 or 50 years? I found a Wildstorm group online that did a Brett Booth artist's edition, and that was absolutely stunning to see, and that was fan produced. There's a market for this stuff. It's great to hear someone inside of the industry so intelligent talking about this.
The one they did was the John Paul Leon one, and John Paul Leon, yeah. So they did that one, but so get this. I don't know if the demand from the stores would have been there, but of course they sold, like Soup also has relationships with stores too, which is also, I didn't bring that up, but they're reaching out to stores to get their product in their stores, right? So like a lot of them have great discounts and all that stuff. Ax-Wielder Jon do the same. So it's not like it's not going to be in stores, but they can take, like they made over 200,000 on that one and they've sold over 1,000 copies. I don't know what your average artist edition for $150 moves units wise, but I don't know if it's 1,000, especially 1,000 off of a brand new website that nobody 100% knows. Right. So that's such a success because of the product was quality. And I think if the product is quality and, that's the Winterman artist edition, which looks fantastic. So if the product is quality and you can present the case to the fans that they might want it, especially a project like that, the book is done, right? They just got to scan the pages in and do the book production. It's not like you got to draw a whole thing. So if you can come up to fans and say, hey, this book is done or almost done, we're putting a professional team, all Marvel guys, DC guys, Eisner winners, Eisner nominees on a book, and you present your case and hopefully get it on shows like yours and let people review it. And thank you for the advanced reviews, by the way. I finally got that to open last night. Yeah, yeah, that was awesome. Yeah, I got those. Those were good. Those were really good. Thank you for those. But like get out there and promote it. Now I'm in that phase of needing to promote it and stuff. I think you can. I hope. I don't think anything. I hope that this model can work. Because I'm making this thing either way. So the next book is coming out. I would love for it to make enough to where I can sustain it, no matter what, and not have to go a different route. But I'll find a different route for it if I have to. So I wholeheartedly agree with your sentiment on the industry. And I think if you think about big systems, sometimes a big system doesn't work as well anymore, and then little pieces of it fall off, and they're little seeds, right? And so this idiot over here's got a Zoop idea. This idiot over here's got a Kickstarter idea. This guy's got a mailing list idea. And these little seeds, one of these trees is going to grow and catch a lot more fruit on it, right? And I don't know I don't know which one I'm doing here, but I'm trying it, and maybe I'll jump back to the big pile again. Everything's up for play.
Well, I follow so many guys from Felix Comic Art, and I actually didn't know that you were like the first guy on there and helped get that going. That's really odd. There are some insanely, like, Felix and Inky Knuckles are just the
Inky
two
Knuckles, man. Inky Knuckles, like I love the Felix guys, but the Inky Knuckles guys, Troy Nixie and Matt Allison, and dude, get out of here, dude. Like those guys are like, that's what I mean when I talk about those indie guys that have like, there's the guys that just draw the way they draw, but do it at a high craft level. And that's my sweet spot. Like where you take that rawness and you polish it and you combine the two. Yeah. Inky Knuckles, like, dude, I can't tell you how many guys that Inky Knuckles had before they were there, because I was the guy, like I sent Trad Moore over to Felix. I sent James Herron over to Felix. I sent Stephen Green over to Felix. I sent all these guys over. right? I sent all these guys over. I was like, Felix, look at this guy, because I was collecting sketches from, and I love this stuff. So I would send the recommendations over to Felix, dude. Before they were at Inky Knuckles, I probably sent all those guys to Felix at some point, but Felix has got so many guys right now, and he can't, or he can't do it, But yeah, the Inky Knuckles guy, I think his name might be Caleb. I listened to an interview with him, the art rep. I forget his name. I don't want to mess his name up, but yeah, we follow each other. We follow each other's accounts, and he is collecting an assassin's row of my absolute favorite type of artist, which is that, like, Matt Allison, dude. Have you seen Kankor?
Dude, I was just getting ready to say that, like, I have not seen another crowdfunding project that I was excited to back and I thought was going to be as successful as Matthew Allison's Canker project. And for anybody who is not paying attention, that fucker dropped on Fundraiser. All right, not Kickstarter. He was like you. He was like, no, I'm not going to take the Kickstarter deal. I'm going to go and I'm going to do where my gut tells me. He funded that book 2 fucking hours, guys. Hardcover, $50 retail, beautiful collection of the most insane, off the wall, independent antithesis of Marvel DC Image bullshit that you see on the stands. Dude does exactly what is in his brain, but done to the abs. He's like the Frank Frazetta or Bernie Wrightson, Sam Keith of independent underground comics. Canker is unbelievable. And to see someone with that level of intelligence be able to hit with that kind of power on a platform like Fundraiser really has reinforced the fact that it's what you said. It's how you approach the project. It's having a well thought out plan and a good product to approach people with and giving them the faith to know that they're going to get it. And I really, really wanted to hammer home that this is one of the only campaigns that I've seen and creators that I've talked to that does reach the level of intelligence and professionalism and forethought that Matthew Allison has had.
Yeah, he's I've known him for a while, and I'm really happy for him, really proud of him for that campaign. I wish it would have done better. It should have made $200,000. I think it should have made a ton, but he's doing just like me. He's picking a different crowdfunding site. He's doing it, and I was like, that's such a risk. Like, I felt bad for him. Like, dude, I know what that pain is, like picking a brand new crowdfunding site. But yeah, dude, I'm super happy for him, and his stuff is incredible, man. I had a page from him. I bought it from him at a show, but then we didn't meet back up at the show for me to pick it up. And so he wrote me, like, when the campaign kicked off, he's like, dude, I still got this page. I've been sitting on it for like 4 years. I'm like, dude, sell it in your campaign and then give me a commission instead. Even make more on the campaign. So, but I'm getting me a Lord Fang commission from him. So we're good. We're swapping. So, but yeah, I love his stuff, man. He's good. There's so many guys. Those guys are Inky Knuckle guys. That's the thing, man. I look at my stuff and it's still not good enough, Like, I'm not really Inky Knuckles side. I'm not really as good as the top Felix guys. I'm just doing, and that's when I realized that the only way I'm separating myself if I write and draw my own stuff. Like, really, you write and draw your own stuff, who's going to critique you then? Like, it's even more you know what I mean? So, like, with Matt Allison, I say it's like the experimental rock of comic books, right? It's just like, you know what I mean? It's like he's just doing it, but there's like masterful stuff in there, and it's its own language, and it's like what I love about books like that, you pick it up and you're like, where did this come from? Like, who fucking made this? You know what I mean? Like when I go to the comic shop and I find, like, everything else is like cookie cutter, but you find something and it's like it's chords coming out of infinite blackness and monsters and they're punching each other. And why did you make this? Who made this? It's like this enigma, and it's like this relic, and they've made it and they put it in this world, and they've done it at a masterful level. Clearly took forever to do. Like, why did you do this? And it's like, I love that. Like, I love it. Be like, it's why I love comics, man. Like, you can't get that anywhere. It's why I love ash cans and stuff. But to see it done at a high professional level, like some of the Inky Knuckle guys are just straight up professional badasses, but some of them are doing this raw cartooning thing, at a masterful craft level that just has all my admiration. I love it.
That's the same kind of original, like the originality and hook that I felt when I was checking out Ax-Wielder Jon. And that's just a rough PDF that I have on my computer. And I have such bad dyslexia. It's so hard for me to read digital print. I was like, oh God. And that's another thing. I was wondering, you spoke about the, drawing each panel at a time. And honest to God, as a guy who pays a lot of attention to construction of pages and that kind of thing, I hadn't hardly noticed that. It doesn't feel repetitive. I don't get the 9 panel grid born. And there are guys who can do it right. Dave Gibbons looking in your direction. I'm not throwing shade, but it can get very repetitive and very formulaic. And there was nothing repetitive or formulaic about the book. Has that been a big battle for you to try to make that layout work, or has it worked really well for you as being able to maybe more easily lay out the page?
It did a couple of things. It did a couple of things storytelling wise, where sometimes, have you ever read the manga Pluto by Urasawa? It's my favorite book. And what happens in Pluto is I'll say something to you, and you say something back to me, and then I might stop and do this, and then come up and deliver my line. That little beat is probably a 1/6 panel, not a third panel. So I'm not getting to do my little turns like I like, but I knew that the first book is set up, right? The whole first book is set up for you to be hooked with Jon. And I knew I wanted it to feel cinematic. I've been talking with the editor, and we're thinking about moving to a 6 panel grid because there's a lot of meat and potatoes to get in book 2, and then ending it back on a storybook kind of intro, because it kind of has the first book kind of has a storybook feel, and if the last book has a storybook feel, in the middle is this meat and potatoes with Jon and all of his adventures, because we're going to get to know Jon more speaking wise, and he doesn't have a lot of dialogue, in the first book. So there's a few times with there's some henchmen talking, and they're the more verbose of the characters, and it's like that scene probably could have worked if I wasn't rigid about the layouts in 3 pages, but now it's 5 pages, and all it did though was expand the book, and I wanted to fill the book out, and I wanted it to breathe. So it's helping me. It's like it's helped me more than hurt me, and knowing that I don't have to do a page a day. I got to get 1 panel done a day, get 7 done a week. Every 3 weeks, I've, registered 10 pages or so. And I just keep going, every 4 weeks, 10 pages. And I've just been methodical. It's not hard. I mean, it's hard, but it's not hard. It's not like when I sit down, like I got to get a whole detailed page in today. That's so stressful. And so there's like something about asking less of myself. I've been able to give more of myself to it. And then when I can get a whole page done in a day, I'm like, that's awesome. I got 3 days worth of work done. So like, and if I do that in a year, 2 pages a week for 52 weeks is over 100 pages. That's what Jon is. And so I get to do my 1 graphic album a year. I love that, love the European style. 1 graphic album a year. It's evergreen. It's something you put on yourself and be proud of. It's a hardcover. It's oversized. It looks beautiful. It's got a beautiful painted cover. It's got as much bleeding detail as I can squeeze into it. And then I love that model. Like, why doesn't Art Adams do 1 book a year? Like he kind of did to start, right? Instead of doing all these covers, do 1 book every 3 years, and you'll be having evergreens out all the time. And why aren't people doing the Jeff Darrow model? Like, go away for 3 years. We will read those Shaolin Cowboys and find something new on every page in the meantime. And then if you come hit us with this next series is coming out, hit us again. And with your catalog's building up, he's not wasting time as the 1700th artist drawing Spider-Man. And yes, it would be cool to see him draw Spider-Man. I would love that. But let him build his brand, and like I have such respect for him and respect for that, and like, and he showed me some previews of his new book, and it's so good. Like he's better than ever. Like he's better than ever, and he can just coast, but he's not. And I have such admiration for that. And he's always betting on himself and building Shaolin Cowboy. And yeah, he's definitely, I look at him and I look at him, how he handles himself as how I'd like to handle myself, him and Quietly both, actually. So they're my art heroes aesthetically, but if you meet them as men, they're really sweet and really genuine guys, and I look up to them.
Yeah, Darrow I've read and seen quite a bit of stuff with. He seems really nice, but also just as equally intelligent and very determined. Well, I mean, you can just look at his work and know the guy's got an impeccable freaking work ethic. You know,
Yeah,
you don't
dude, he
accidentally
blows it
draw
away.
that.
Dude, his next book is 200 and something pages, dude, and he penciled it all, then he went back and inked it all. Dude, if after I drew 200 pages, I couldn't imagine going back. And then they're not just pages; they're Jeff Darrow pages, so they have like 15 times the detail of a normal page. So it's unbelievable, like unbelievable. Like he's incredible. He's a guy that like everyone would be like, "Oh, Nick, you draw detailed," and you get like the average fan like, "Oh, it's detailed, it's detailed." Like, I'll hire you, editor. I'll hire you because it's detailed. And I'm like over that, like it has nothing to do with anything, but that's fine. That thing's going to be down soon. Like it has nothing to do with anything. But Jeff Darrow is the only guy, even after drawing 33 inches high and 17 inches wide and using 0.003 microns, he's the only guy I can look at and be like, oh, detail, detail. This is so detailed. He literally turns you back to that kid. He's so incredibly meticulous. And I cannot stress this about Jeff's work enough. There is no facade to, there's no rendering. It's not rendering. It's all contours. It's all shape. So he's developed each shape and he's drawn contours. A lot of people think stuff is detailed because it's got a bunch of scratchy lines all over it, but his aren't scratchy lines. His all defined form. So it's not even detail like the busy detail. It all means something. It all defines shape. It all defines objects. You are in his mind. You are walking around in it. Dogs are taking shits and cars are crashing through. And then most people, cars got to crash into something, do a brick wall. Now, Jeff has it go through the brick wall, into a grocery store, into the candy aisle, draws all the wrappers exploding. Why? Why? Because he can, or because he feels like it, And again, you pick his book up, you pick up Hard Boiled, and you're like, why? How and why? And wow, he's one of those guys.
I know that's what Miller said when he started getting the art back was like, wow, okay, well, I guess we got to change the entire story because he's getting
Yeah.
blown apart so bad, we're going to have to turn him into a freaking robot.
Yeah.
I think we've about got everything, man. Is there anything that I missed? Anything you've got coming up that you'd like to share? The Zoop campaign for Ax-Wielder Jon is starting a couple
Yeah,
weeks.
it's about 2 weeks. I don't know when this will drop, but April 26th, we're going live. If you go to just axwielder.com or axwielderjon.com, it direct links to the campaign. If you put your email in, I'll love you. We're going to send hopefully everyone something extra if you signed up early and buy something. So I'm thinking everyone on that early email list will probably get a Marvel Masterpiece card or something like that. Do something nice for everyone who signs up early, and there's enough of you signed up where I can get them cheap, because if we get to 400 or 500 people, then the 500 order will be a lot cheaper than the 50 order. You know what I mean? So we're looking at something like that for you guys, maybe stickers instead, but we're still talking about it. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to do my own thing. I would love for people to come out and support it. It's going to be a beautiful oversized hardcover. Looks like it's going to be about 12 inches tall. We got a beautiful painting on it. And you could probably look me up on social media by the time this is over, and you guys will get to see it. It looks amazing. It's a big thing we have planned. It's, by the time this drops, it's going to be almost finished. By the time the campaign's over, it will be finished. And we got distribution lined up, and it's much as security as I can offer for a 148 page oversized hardcover. I've tried to put into the forefront of this before I launched it. So I'm not begging you. But I do promise you, I put everything I have into it, and it's a story with a lot of meaning to me. It's over the top. It's violent. Um, it's everything I want out of a comic book. It's got a little bit of heart to it, maybe, and a lot of the violence is a veneer. It's just an aesthetic or something for some of the better beats. I hope to surprise people with. So.
It's got a lot of heart, in my opinion. Anybody that wants to check out your Instagram page, there will be links below. There's some incredible art to just kind of peruse on there and get a feeling for your style and what you've done. I really can't thank you enough for being on the channel, man. I'm really happy to have been able to throw just hopefully a little bit of weight and expose some people to this. Um, Make sure you keep me in the loop about the campaign. And guys, if you're watching this, whenever the campaign launches, I will have stuff up on the community tab on YouTube and my Instagram and Facebook page, that kind of thing. Thank you so much again for being on here, man. I super appreciate it. And best of luck with Ax-Wielder Jon. I know it's going to get funded, but I just hope we get to see that, that Allison 25, like 2 hours in funded for you, brother, because this book deserves it. A lot of heart, a lot of skill.
Hey, when you reached out to do this, you're the first guy to reach out, and I have a lot of trepidation asking people for their time, and for you to reach out and read the book and think so highly of it means a lot. And so for you to use your platform to help me when we don't know each other means a lot, and I can't thank you enough. So thank you to your fans, and thank you for your time, especially.
Absolutely, man. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you, and I am really looking forward to what you got coming up, guys. So make sure you use all those links in the description below. Like I said, keep up on details about his stuff. Make sure you check him out on social media. Guys, you're going to want to check out this book. I don't say that a lot about many books, but I will tell you this is one of the few books that I've ever read that kind of approaches that ant level of uniqueness. Not really read a lot of other books like this. It resonated very deeply with me on a lot of levels. Story-wise, art-wise, everything. Check it out. Thank you again. And as always, folks, I really, truly, and honestly ask only two things. Keep hitting those local shops. And for tonight, keep supporting your artists. Thanks so much for sticking with me and my special guest this week. I hope you all enjoyed, maybe even learned something. If you did enjoy what you saw, think about getting in the comments section below and letting me know. Share these videos with your friends. If you really enjoyed what you saw, make sure you Hulk smash that subscribe button. If you do that, make sure you ding the little notification bell so you never miss another video or premiere again. If you feel like you're in a position to help the channel grow, think about using the links in the description below to sign up for my Patreon page. For as little as $3 a month, you get access to tons of behind-the-scenes posts, exclusive content like uncut interviews, and you can even get your name in the credits. If Patreon is not your thing, but you still want to support the channel, have no fear. After 2 years, I can finally offer memberships right here on YouTube. Just click the little join button and make sure you select the tier and perks that fit you best. You can also make one-time donations towards specific goals or just tip the channel using the Ko-Fi links in the description below as well. If that's not enough, you can even pick up your very own JerkComic shirts like the ones you see on the screen now. This video was made possible by the Jerk Broadcasting Service as well as generous grants from the Patreon, Ko-Fi, and YouTube members you see on the screen now. I'd like to seriously thank every single one of you who's chosen to support the channel this year. I think the quality of the videos has really been improving, and I just hope I'm doing you all proud. Most importantly, I hope you all enjoyed, maybe even learned something, and as always, I really, truly, and honestly ask only two things. Keep hitting those local shops, and keep reading comics.